First of all, I'd like to make a couple of comments. Mr. DeLuey, the former Board of Trustees member that we used to have here, made a remark, disparaging remark about my tie. I told him it was a, part of a tuxedo tie. He told him it reminded him of the inside of a Schraff's chocolate box. I told him, no, it isn't. I just want to let you know that, John. It's not paper, it's really cloth. And the other thing, this jacket fits me well because, like people say, I haven't bought a new one. I just have nylon spandex panels on the back, so it still looks good after all these years. Yeah. We'd like to, again, if you want, go get coffee or wherever. We're going to hit one of our traditions right now, which is recognizing former board members who have significantly contributed to what we have done at InfoAge. Tonight we're recognizing Lou LaFreary, for those who know him, Pat Decker, and John DeLuey. Now Lou couldn't be here tonight. He has to be up in Pennsylvania. So I'll tell you a little bit about him. He served on our board from 2007. Right after we formalized the board in December 2006, Lou joined us. And from then until 2016. Lou had, once again, a background in the military. He had 11 years with the military intelligence, which led him to his career supporting Fort Monmouth C4ISR, command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, electronic, sensors, and reconnaissance. I was in personnel and operations. I couldn't figure that out one way or the other. But Lou is the executive vice president and the group manager of CACI, the systems group that was located in Eatontown, New Jersey. He provided the technical, managerial level, fiscal, and administrative leadership to about 475 engineers, technicians, etc., that supported the C4ISR mission. They had like a sales of about $250 million, $250 million, just in Fort Monmouth alone. Due to Lou, CACI provided thousands of dollars in support for our programs and our events and was instrumental in Tobyhanna Army Depot donating to InfoAge hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment and systems, many of which you'll see alongside building 9010. And there was a Frank Zardecki, John? Yes, that was one of our prime contacts up there. We thought that Frank had retired or died. We found out he's still there, so we're reaching out to him again because we can use a lot more equipment. But anyway, Lou is a very active member of our board and was a key player in the development of our strategic plan in 2010, our initial strategic plan. Lou couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to take the plaque that we have for him and I'm going to bring it to him, present it to him when I see him in a few days. Thank you very much. Next, I think I'm followed by Claire French. Claire.
Thank you, Mike, and congratulations to all the honorees tonight. He gave me the wonderful privilege to tell you a little bit about one of the emeritus members tonight, and that's Pat Decker. Her husband, Duncan Decker, was our first benefactor. You wouldn't have this room to enjoy tonight if it wasn't for him. He saw a building that needed work in every portion of it and said, I believe in what you're doing. He talked to Mike. He talked to Fred Carl. Fred Carl's job has always been, and I tease him about, he has the onion. And the history of what happened here is like an onion that Fred would peel a story at a time, each level of that onion. And there was so much to tell. We're certainly going to hear a lot tonight about what many people have contributed to the history here. I've lived about 50 years, not a mile away from here, and all I knew about this site was, it's a secret. No one locally knew what went on. They did a good job keeping it a secret, but when I was fortunate enough to find out what happened here and that the history of this research center made a difference in every major conflict that our country had, made the difference that brought success to our country and to have protected our military and still does today. And I know when I looked at the weather tonight, that satellite, some of that work started here. So it couldn't have happened, though, unless we had somebody that believed in us. Now that meant Fred Carl and Mike and the board and the volunteers, but it also meant people like Pat Decker, her and her husband who believed in telling this story, and they've made it possible over the years. Pat Decker herself believed into so much, she joined us with her blood, sweat, and tears, became a member of our board, and contributed greatly, and has to this day. She's going to finally have her family enjoy her company more than they have in the past with only visits. So I'd like, Pat, to ask you to please come up and please be honored by everyone in this room as Emeritus member of our board. Now, dynamite comes in small packages, you see here. And I know you probably... And you probably didn't even hear her before because this dais is so high, it's about a foot higher than you are. So we'll have to have you stand on a chair or something, dear. But let me read this, Pat. InfoAge designates Patricia E. Thacker, Trustee Emeritus, for her outstanding dedication and support to the InfoAge Science History Learning Center and Museum, the former U.S. Army's Evans Area and Marconi Wireless Belmar Station sites, while serving as a valued member of the Board of Trustees from 2011 to 2018. From everyone here, congratulations and God bless you. Bless you, Pat.
I thank you so much. You have no, I'm going to cry all the way to Chicago. This is an incredible organization. I mean, the number of people who, they're not getting paid, they're volunteering their time to make this wonderful place a piece of history. I think our young people need to know about the wonderful history there is going on. We know it, or I know it because I've been history a long, long time. I mean, I've been around a long time. I don't want to tell you how long, but you can guess. But I wish our young people would appreciate the people who have given up things and who have given their time and their talent and their work and their to make history memorable, to make everything memorable. This is a wonderful country. Let's not spoil it, kids. Let's get with the program, okay? I thank you very much for this wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to cry.
Next, we'll have our chairman of the board, Tom Crowley.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the approximately 18,000 visitors from last year, I'd like to thank you for your support of InfoAge. And a lot of miracles have been performed here through the years, not the least of which is something that transpired about 10 years ago when my former commander said, "You got to come over here and get involved." And I looked at this place and I said, "There's no way this is going to happen." But miracles have been performed here for almost 2 centuries, a century and 25 years. And everything is an evolutionary process. One of the things that, that happens in the life of any entity, any organization, is you go through phases. And it's my honor to describe to you somebody who has brought us into the next phase. So John DeLuey was probably the hardest trustee ever to lasso into this enterprise. And Mike interviewed him, a number of us interviewed him. John was the chairman of the Naval War College Foundation. It's a pretty high-powered organization. Why would he want to be involved with us, Mike? And it took a while for us to convince John that it was worth his time and effort. So after 4 years with us, I think John believed that it was worth the effort at the beginning, and it's worth the effort now. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to commend John on. A finance guy, he gave us a level of sophistication in our own enterprise, our metrics, our operating metrics, that we didn't have. But probably the biggest thing that John gave us, and the thing that I'll always remember, is that he pushed us, cajoled us, encouraged us to think big about this place. And that was not something that we were inclined to think about. We were thinking about bake sales, car washes, raffles. This place is bigger than that, and John got us to the next level. So I'd like to ask John to come up here and accept his Trustee Emeritus Award. John J. DeLuey, Trustee Emeritus, for his outstanding dedication and support of the InfoAge Science Center, Learning Center, and Museum, the former U.S. Army's Evans area and Marconi Wireless Belmar Station sites, while serving as the chairman of the Finance and Governance Committees from 2015 to 2018. Thank you, John.
Thank you. It's true that Mike and I spent several months before I came to InfoAge, and to put it simply, a lot of what Mike told me just wasn't true. I mean, he lied a lot, and I finally believed that anybody who could make it up to lieutenant colonel in the Army could colonel? Full colonel?
Remember that.
Full colonel? Full colonel.
He didn't make that up.
Could never, ever tell a lie. Yes, you could. I thank you so much. The only thing I want to add, because I believe in it, and I believe that all of you who are here because you care about InfoAge. And I am now emeritus. You people are going to go out into the world. And I would like you to think of yourselves as ambassadors of InfoAge, as I feel that I am. And when people talk about institutions that are here in the state of New Jersey, I always mention InfoAge. If they want to know about it, I tell them about it. And hopefully some of these people, maybe a lot of these people, are going to become members, are going to become people who become people who care about us and who help us move into the next phase. And the next phase, in my regard, is going to be a case where what we have here is going to be known, hopefully, far more than regionally, statewide. And in my view, when all is said and done, I would hope that this is a national organization that will never go away because of all that it has. So please, you're all ambassadors. Go out and tell the story. It's a great story. Thank you so much. I much appreciate it.
John and I like to break each other's chops all the time. But the thing is, got the greatest admiration for the man. He gave us a level of sophistication that we didn't have before. And it's something that we needed. He put us on sound financial footing insofar as our books were concerned, our inventory was concerned, and our bylaws were concerned. So it's exceptional in that respect. We're going to slide over right now to one of the main reasons that we're here tonight, and that's our Wall of Honor. And I think if you have read anything about InfoAge, 1941, when the Army took this place over, they took it from King's Christian College, and it was to move, And I can't understand this, why they moved from Sandy Hook, part of it from Sandy Hook, here to keep it away from the ocean. I mean, the ocean is only about a mile that way. But they made the base, and as Claire said, people who lived here didn't know what it was for years. People who live here now still don't know what it is, and that's one of our problems. But the work that was done here, and if you start looking at it, it's the fuses, the variable time fuses, the guardrail systems, J-star systems. John Savini worked on a lot of them. Mike worked on so many of them. The people who were honoring worked on so many of them. And I know that as an infantryman in Vietnam, some of the systems that they had here saved a lot of my lives, of my men. So, you know, I'm pleased to be able to stand up here tonight and at least introduce one person. Fred Carl was going to do it, but Fred, like many of us here, pretty much emotionally attached. Fred was unable to introduce Felix, was unable to be here. He was afraid he wouldn't be able to take it. He'd break down. And he asked me to do it for him, to introduce Felix. The bio in the program tells a lot about the man and his 34-year career at Camp Evans from 1951 to 1984. What I found interesting about this year's inductees is that Felix bridges the years between Dr. Webb and Mike Ryan. He started off working with a lot of the folks from the Diana Project, and then he ended up in electronic warfare, where Mike's last 9 years were in the electronic warfare as a project, as a head man. So I don't know too much about the man, and that's unfortunate, I'll tell you, because I wish I could say more about the family. So I'm going to ask you, Matt, or your family, to tell whatever you want to tell about him. But one more thing is the National Atomic Testing Museum, just off the strip in Las Vegas, Nevada, has a display on Felix. Okay, and we have contributed some of our stuff to this display. And we are working with them at the present time to try and to duplicate that display here at Fort Monmouth, or at the Evans area, at our Diana site. And now I'd like to present this plaque to the Levica family. Matt, Paul, Jill. It gives me great pleasure to present this plaque to you. Felix Levica, nuclear testing and analysis, for his exceptional contributions to the defense of the United States while working at the United States Army Evans area, July 28th, 2018. Thank you. I wish to say some words.
Okay, sure. I guess a quick personal note. When I got here before the dinner, we took a chance to walk around the grounds. It just brought me back to my childhood. I mean, growing up here, it was such an ordeal to get behind these fences. And as a kid, when you drive up and you see, like, you know, these fences, and you're just the awe of what is going on there. I got a little taste of that because my dad had in the house we had, the entire basement, at least 2/3 of the basement was his so-called, office space, workshop. But, had all the equipment there too. And so, I feel like, walking around some of these halls here, I've seen some of my dad's old equipment. It's kind of fun. But that's who he was. He was fascinated by all the technology. And I think he was also someone that inspired others to be fascinated by this, because just, how things work, how he could make them better. He always had the motto of, if you're going to do something that's worth doing, you got to do it right. You got to have the right tools. He always kind of researched how to make things happen. I think a lot of that got instilled by his career here, and I think a lot of that he instilled in others and in all the projects that he worked on. And I think it's great what InfoAge is doing here, because I think that whole kind of inspiration of technology and ways that we can use it to further our world is something that it's just right in his wheelhouse, and I think we've been really happy to know that he's being honored here tonight. I think it goes way back to when they first got started with Fred, and he was just a big fan of of this and donated a bunch of stuff and was a big supporter. So I know he'd be really happy to be here. Plus, he would have loved to get his picture taken. He was always loved to get in the photos, and so so it's having the photo on the wall is a big deal. But thanks again for honoring tonight.
I'm going to be followed by John Cimini.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, tonight I have the privilege of honoring Mike Ryan. If you look in here, the bios of all these people, all these are tremendous. And a couple of things stand out here for me. One is
He's young and handsome.
that really stands out. There's a difference. But I retired from Fort Monmouth before things moved down to Aberdeen. But I knew Mike for many, many years when we were at the Electronic Warfare Laboratory. And Mike went down and he did his duty now for many, many years. And he and Christine both support Aberdeen, even very well, I might add, even after the functions moved to Fort Monmouth. But one of the things I can remember, I had worked at Fort Monmouth in EW Lab, and then when I retired, I ended up somehow working for 6 companies as a contractor. After being in the same organization for 30 years, and somebody said it's because they kept finding out about me, but no. But I got to connect with Mike again on a program. If you're reading here, he's, phenomenal experiences and what he's able to do in terms of planning and creation. We laugh a little bit, but there's a program now that the Army has stepped up to and grabbed that Mike essentially created called MFUMES. And I got to help support that program a little bit in my final bit of work with a company, multifunction electronic warfare system. This is going to be the ultimate system that the Army can have, mainly to protect its troops, provided with intelligence. The way things work in electronic warfare is you have to understand the enemy and the threat. So you go out there and find out. Once you understand the threat, you then attempt to exploit it, okay? And then you counter it. And that's what Mike has done so well throughout his career. The real great program, though, in my mind, is the counter IED program that Mike had a significant, major part in doing. And talk about important programs. We go back here, Camp Evans, to critical times in World War II, right, with the development of radar, which, according to Winston Churchill, really won World War II. He says the atomic bomb ended it, but radar won it. Okay, and to shed some light, Mike, why did they move the radar research function from Sandy Hook to here? They were literally worried about saboteurs coming off U-boats. They had easy access to Sandy Hook, so they wanted to find a place still close to Fort Monmouth, but they figured they would never get past Belmar. So that was the case. Now, the counter IED program was a threat, and Mike can tell you when he gets up to speak, that nobody predicted would happen. And this is unusual because the intel community, Army intelligence, gets a bad rap. But let me tell you, part of the DoD intelligence community is excellent. But no one figured that you can take commercial off-the-shelf equipment, tweak it a little bit, and trigger unexploded ordnance that Saddam Hussein had left in his arsenals, that the bad guys sort of scooped up. And the question was, from the Army, what do you do about this? This is something we never predicted. We don't know how to deal with it. Well, it turns out that engineers in Mike's organization and at Fort Monmouth had developed some previous program equipment that was going to be used in the first Gulf War for protecting Army troops from counter-mortar proximity fuses. And it turns out that 200 units were built, okay, but the war ended so quickly they couldn't get over there in time, or maybe they did. You can enhance that one, Mike. But they were put into storage. Now, all of a sudden, this new threat arises that nobody has a clue about. So the Army says, help. So what happens at Fort Monmouth? Certain engineers say, wait a second. If we pull those 200 units out of storage, tweak the frequencies a little bit, we can get them over there, and we think we can solve the problem. Bingo. Now what happens is, the way things work, again, is countermeasure, okay? Then the bad guys work on a countermeasure. And then we work on a countermeasure. And what happens is, you have to stay abreast of this. And Mike was absolutely tremendous, and the whole team, in being able to do that, because electronic warfare is a lot of force protection. And I have a chart I show in a presentation, and it's a graph. It goes like this. The years are going this way, and the number of deaths in Iraq from IEDs increases. 50% of all casualties in Iraq of coalition forces were due to IEDs. Then Mike and everyone else starts building these counter-IED equipment, and you watch the graph. Bam. Plummets. Saving lives. That's what we do around here. That's what's been done since 1941. Now, everybody have a program? I must say one other thing here. This is the center of it. If you open up, turn one page. Okay? The key to being able to get a job done like Mike has done in this area is surround yourself with competent people. Surround yourself with competent contractors. Delegate and empower, and let them get the job done. We have an ad here. Okay? Company called, excuse me, sorry Dave, Megaphase. Okay? Now if you see the environment in the Middle East that this equipment has to operate, this counter-IED equipment, there could be no failures. There's no recalls. Lives are literally depend on that. And just like to mention that Mr. Bill Pote, founder and CEO of Megaphase, is here tonight, and I'd just like to give him a hand in his company. But that's not to take anything away from Mike Ryan. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. I would like to now yield the floor to Mike and say a few words, and thank you very much for everything, Mike. This kind of looks like it, doesn't it? Okay, so InfoAge honors Michael Ryan, Electronic Countermeasures, for his exceptional contributions to the defense of the United States while working at the United States Army's Evans area. July 28, 2018. Congratulations. We have a plaque for the family, too.
I am so honored to be here tonight. I do have a long history with Fort Monmouth and with electronic warfare. John and I go way back. And I know about InfoAge. I've been here before, and I looked at the Wall of Honor, and there are some real heroes on that wall. And I'm just so impressed with the entire InfoAge organization and everyone that spoke tonight, and how we're trying to tell the story of not only what went on here, you know, at Evans, Camp Evans, but Army electronic warfare and the whole history. And I know most of you know about that history, but probably some of you don't. And the Army walked away from electronic warfare back in the 90s, right, John? All right, the wall went down, and it was a trade. It was a post-war, Cold War kind of peace offering, we had to make some decisions. We, DOD and Army, and so the Army decided, you know what, we don't need to have electronic warfare as our core competency. We'll rely on others to do that in the next war. And lo and behold, we didn't have a next war for a while, right? But the Air Force is very good at it. The Navy is very good at electronic warfare. And so we gave away not only our budget for research and development, but force structure on the Army side. Now they're called electronic warfare officers, right? Highly skilled military officers and warrants and enlisted who know the craft, right? And it's a little bit of black magic. And so for over 20 years, we didn't have that. And then I was talking with John just before this, and when that first IED killed that first American soldier in Afghanistan in 2000, and I think it was 2, and the Army didn't have a program. Not only did they not have a program, but we didn't have the military tactical knowledge on the Army side to integrate that into the fight. And so here we go. We're trying to figure things out. And I really think I was just lucky. You know, all right, Mike, stand up the team. And I really want to recognize this plaque is wonderful. And I've told this story before. John, I might have even told you this story. I was the monkey in the capsule, right? That spaceship was going to go to the moon because everyone was blocking for us. Congress, DOD, Army. Those of you who are familiar with defense acquisition and how agile we are, right? And quick. Well, guess what? Everyone lined up. And so I said, that was my moonwalk or my moonshot, and we were going to hit that moon no matter who was in the capsule, right? But the team behind that rocket was great. And a couple of those people or our former honorees of the wall. Charlie Christensen, I think he was a couple years ago, right? Bob Dotto. Henry Muller, who I went to high school with at St. Rose, and I don't know if my sister Patty there remembers Henry. I think he was in Debbie's class. They might have dated. Yeah. I always held it over Henry's head. And then the Army gave me the best military officers. They were majors. They were like these iron majors. Josh Walsh. Remember Josh Walsh? Matt Russell. Jim Ross. All who have eventually become 06 PMs. Some of them retired, but have been extremely successful. But back in the day, they were majors who were my deputies and my assistant PMs, and they were killers. And then folks like Steve Kostick, who some of you know, who was probably between him and a guy named Ramon Llanos, probably the really key to the success of what we did. So the problem hit. I was actually working this program called Distributed Common Ground System Army, which this was back in early 2000, and it was the #1 Army Intel program, and we were trying to define what that was, right? Mari, I worked with Kurt, and it was so frustrating. And it was all charts and trying to explain. And I got pulled out of that, and I guess by name, selection is great. And they said, Mike, we need you to run this. And there was 5 guys from I2WD who, as John said, took this SEPS protection system that was really designed as mortars are coming in they had a little radar on them, right, John, right? And when they came in close, not before they hit, they would sense how close they were to the ground, they would explode, and it would cause massive destruction. And so there was this system that would cause them to pre-detonate way up and out of harm's way, and for Desert Storm. And we didn't use them. and we stored them. And then when this threat hit, I said we got caught with our pants down. We didn't have anything, but a couple really smart guys said, you know what, we can take that SEPS, we can turn it on its side, we can point it down towards the road, and we won't predet, but we will prevent a signal coming in to a munition or a large-scale bomb that would give the code to trigger and detonate it. And it worked. And then the threat started to jump around and get smart and use commercial technology, our own commercial technology against us. And so here we go. And so we're off and running. So it started with 5, and I think we grew to several hundred. I was the product director. So not only were we in a massive recruitment mode, and here was the interesting thing. It was so interesting. I told everyone who worked this program with me, I said, and we were running fast, and we were working late, but everyone was, and every morning we read the news about IEDs and how many deaths and casualties, and that's how we started the day. And I said, okay, let's go. And every night we just felt like we made a difference. And like John said, those casualty rates were climbing, and this is typical of the Army, right? The Army will play from behind until they have to, and then they'll aggressively achieve the objective, and they'll succeed. And we did. And not that we solved it all, right? It's still a problem today. But I said we took them off the wire. In other words, or we put them back on the wire. In other words, they were using technology against us, and we made them go back to primitive methods like Wile E. Coyote and wire and burying their, and we'd catch them, right? So either way, it wasn't good for them, but soldiers died, and sailors and airmen and Marines, and that probably, I did a lot of other things, a lot of electronic warfare things in my life. My 34-year career, that was probably, not even probably, by far that was the best program I ever worked. A lot of sacrifices. Chris, my son, he was little at the time and I was never home. Christine, my wife. After that, I came back as the deputy overseeing electronic warfare and the crew program, plus offensive cyber, space control programs, ground-based signals intelligence, and a couple other things, and I was never home. And I just recently retired last year, and now I'm home a little bit more. I'm still working, but a little bit more. She said a little bit, not enough, but more. I just want to tell one story, and I know I'm maybe rambling a little bit, but this is 2006. And so in the beginning, we fielded things we had and we modified, like that SEPS, right? We called it Warlocks, Warlock Green, Warlock Red, Warlock Blue. And it worked for a while, and then the threat caused us to then totally change our technology. And in came this program called Duke. And so we recognized Bill Pody a little bit, right? That was an amazing program because the Army they did call it their second Manhattan Project, which I was even impressed. I'm like, oh my God, I better pay attention here. And it wasn't your normal, regular heroes, the big companies, the Northrops, or the Boeings, or Raytheon, or it was all the smalls, and so we ran this competition, and there's a company called, and we had to produce, first of all, we had to get the technology right, it had to be adaptable, it had to be agile, and it had to overpower that threat and be upgradable. And we had to produce a boatload, tens of thousands of systems. So there was a supply and demand aspect to it, and lo and behold, this company called Syracuse Research Corporation, a non-profit corporation up in New York, won. And again, their middle name was research, not production. And we're supposed to produce tens of thousands. And everyone thought we got it wrong. And I ran that competition. I said, no, these are the right guys, and we got the right team. And there were all small companies like Megaphase and Bill, who provided cables, or Farzine, who was the CEO of this company called First RF, and SRC, who were the heroes, the main heroes, who no one thought gave them a chance, right? And then we brought in some killers like Telephonics, right, who knew how to work supply chain, and we did it. We only missed schedule 1 month. 1 month out of 50, 60 months, and we delivered, and it was early. And I remember, I'll use Bill as an example. Never before did I think we had that kind of relationship. The government likes to have an arm's length with their suppliers, right, and their contractors. I'm in charge of you. This was an equal partnership. I'd be talking to Bill on the phone, or Farzine, or Joe Battaglia from Telephonics, and I said, okay, we got to do this. The money's coming, but it's not, Congress hasn't approved it yet, and everyone took risks. We all leaned forward. I don't know if it'll ever happen again. It may happen probably the next time we get into a situation like this. But one thing I learned too was, as I came out of that job in 2006, and they sent me to charm school, right, to be an SES. And then I came back as the deputy, and that program crew was under me and all those others. And I said, we've got to do this differently. And so I started to push and promote and go into the building and brief this program John mentioned, multifunction EW, and what I called integrated electronic warfare. In other words, we have to get back to how we used to do things in the Army and have an offensive EW capability, a defensive force protect like the crew, and then a command and control system. And I started that briefing, going into the Pentagon and briefing back in as early as 2005 or 6, right? And it took a while, but now the programs they're actually kicking off now. It took a long while, right? By the way, John told me, he says, hey, last year Henry Muller talked for 25 minutes, so you get about 5 or 6, but in my calculation, the other 2 guys aren't here, so, but I'm almost at 18 minutes, I think. So, anyway, I love what I do. I loved what I did. It wasn't me. I was the monkey in the capsule. But I loved being that monkey in that capsule. And it was such a surprise, actually, to get nominated and actually receive this honor. And I'm just honored to be here with the crowd tonight and to be on that wall with all those heroes. So thank you so much.
Just a little aside, there's a couple of people here who really appreciate the work that Mike and his people have done. And one is Jim and Gloria Kudrick, whose son was over in Afghanistan. I've had 2 boys that deployed. They were both infantry platoon leaders, and they're going to deploy again next year as infantry company commanders. So Mike, the work that you did hopefully is going to help them an awful lot. We really appreciate it. Next we have Ray Chase is going to introduce Dr. Webb and his family. Ray is a Marine. Ray is a Marine. I just want to let you know. So we pay him the proper homage.
Thank you, Mike. We're here tonight to honor a 3rd member of the Project Diana team. We previously honored Dr. McPhee in 2006, and Mr. King Sterdota last year. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Dr. Harold D. Webb and the Diana Project. And just as an aside, InfoAge applied for an IEEE milestone award for the Diana site in commemoration of the historic work that was done there. And just within the last few days, we heard that it's been approved. So next year, we'll be having a ceremony at the Diana site when that plaque is mounted in the building there. I met Dr. Webb's daughter a few years ago when she was here on a visit, and I was impressed with her passion about her father's work here and elsewhere, but I think more so the work he did during the war here. If you look at your program, there are a couple of notations that her father was here from 1942 to 46. And one of the things he did was he reduced the noise figure in a radar receiver by 11 decibels. Now, that's the same thing as improving the effectiveness of a radar over 10-fold. Now, engineers and scientists don't get that opportunity very often. So that was a significant improvement to support our effort in World War II. It also mentions that towards the end of the war, he worked on a moving target indicator, or MTI, system for radar. Now, I worked on post-war radars, some with MTI and some without, and I have to tell you that that's a major difference. So that is another major improvement program, and it's just standard equipment on radar today. Now, in 1945, Dr. Webb joined the Diana team, and he made some significant contributions there as well. As a matter of fact, he and another associate were the only ones present when they finally succeeded. So he was the he was on the spot when they got that response, that echo back from the moon. As a matter of fact, the general who head of R&D in Washington didn't really believe that it happened, and so he brought down a couple of experts from MIT to say, well, did it really happen? And as you would suspect, when they first tried it, it didn't work. But just then a big truck drove down the road here and jostled something, and bingo, it worked. So, you know, it was a loose connection or a recalcitrant crystal. They got it to work, and they proved it. And it was a major accomplishment to prove that you could send signals through the ionosphere, and it was a stepping stone to space. Now, Dr. Webb's daughter's name is Diana because she was born just about the time when that event happened, and so she is the Diana lady. And after she visited here a couple of years ago, she sent me some of his papers, and shortly after the Diana event, he created a comic strip, and it was called A Round Trip to Mars, and it was published in Picture News. And it was a several-page comic strip explaining the work that was done here and predicting space travel and all the other space exploits that we've seen in the last generation or two. So he was predicting a future very forcefully. Dr. Webb left here after the Diana project, went back to Illinois, and had a distinguished career in teaching and research in space and radio astronomy. He received the Franklin College Alumni Citation Award in 1961 and the Everett Award for Teaching Excellence in 1974. His participation in professional and academic organizations is far too numerous to list here. So he was a very well recognized academician. In reviewing his accomplishments, particularly at Camp Evans, this country was indeed fortunate to have had his services in a time of peril during World War II. And it's our honor to add his name to the Information Age Wall of Honor. Diana Webb, will you come up and receive this? For his excellent, Dr. Harold D. Webb, Project Diana, for his exceptional contributions to the defense of the United States while working in the United States Army's Evans area, July 28, 2018.
Well, first I'd like to thank you, Ray, for that really good introduction for my father. This is some of the things that when you're cleaning out the attic, you come across. This would be the Daily Mirror, New York newspaper in January 1946. You can see that the banner headline even tops things about A-bomb tests. So this was the news of the day. 50 years later, here's a picture of my dad holding this very piece of paper, which is why it was in the attic, to commemorate the events that happened that he had taken part in 50 years before. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you very much to InfoAge. This is quite an honor for our family and for myself, and yes, I am the Diana. To answer the question I'm always asked is, no, the site was not named after me. I was named after the project. Dad was a very unassuming man. He would be both honored and slightly embarrassed to know that he was being presented with this plaque today. Dad grew up in a different age. He was born in 1909. He was the youngest of 5 children on a farm, grew up in central Indiana. His father was kind of the old-fashioned kind of guy and didn't believe in this newfangled stuff like tractors or electricity. Dad literally helped plow the fields behind a team of horses. I used to know their names. Tonight I cannot remember the names of the draft horses. My father's mother, on the other hand, was a teacher, and 3 of her 5 sons followed her into the teaching profession. Dad was fascinated by radios. He was fascinated by Marconi. When he was still in his teens, Dad built a radio. I don't know how you build a radio. Out there on the farm, he had some wood and some nails and some vacuum tubes and some wire, and he says, well, it's very simple, you did this. And I was like, okay, Dad, great. So after Dad escaped the farm, He received his PhD from Indiana University. He was still milking the cows every morning when he got up before he went to class to receive his PhD. Okay, so that's the background of my father. That was his childhood. From then he went on, became a teacher, a professor at different universities, and when World War II rolled around, too old to go into the Army, thank goodness, he wanted to do something patriotic for his country. And in some of his papers he said, I felt a sense that I wanted to serve my country in the way that I could. The way that he could then was through research. And he joined the group here at Camp Evans in 1942. At the end of the war, then he drifted, or was coerced, I don't know which, into the Diana Project. When I was a child, the names of the Diana Projects were household words: DeWitt, Moffat, Jack, King. We heard about them every night. They were just people, you know, just guys that my dad worked with. But what they did was extraordinary. And like so many steps into a new frontier or in science, they didn't know they were making history. The colonel, he had an idea that you could use the moon as a reflector for radar transmissions or radio transmissions, and had been working on this before the war. He held this project, Project Diana, after the Roman goddess of the moon. That's my name. And his first idea was to do something useful with this technology that had been developed as a wartime technology, this secret, top secret stuff called radar. You couldn't even say the word. It was a secret word. So his idea was, okay, you could do it, maybe do some transmissions, use the moon as a reflector, a big mirror up there in the sky, maybe for television, you know, Howdy Doody, you'd see it through half the world. Maybe other wartime applications if there was something, if for heaven forbid we would go back to war. And so he set up this little project to show that there were peacetime uses for this high-tech, horrible, wonderful technology called radar. In the rather flowery words of the press of the day, come on, don't make me do this. Okay, it recognized me, thank you. They referred to it as the strong arm of radar reaching to the sky. Don't you like it? The strong arm of radar, of this wartime application reaching to the sky. The work that they wound up doing is now recognized as being, quote, the birth of the space age. They didn't see it that way at the time. It was a project. It was interesting. It was a way to, you know, use this radar stuff. They made, they had old equipment. They fiddled with it. They messed with it. They tinkered around with it. Does this sound like anybody you know in their Radio Shack out in the backyard? My father made several what he considered to be significant contributions to the project. I won't go into all of this. Recently we had a house cleaning event, as one should from time to time. It took 72 years for this one. And we came across a lot of things, like I said, the headlines of the day, a lot of newspaper articles. It made big press at the time. There was a lot of these little humorous clippings, like, oh, you know, now Frank Sinatra can sing about the silvery disc in the sky that radar found, or something, you know, pick your favorite song. Jokes about deli owners could go to the moon and open the pickle and rye bread concession for all that blue cheese. It was the stuff of beyond imagination, and I guess that after World War II, people needed something as a little pick-me-up. Dad wrote a lot of his stuff down. He was very, like I said, he was a quiet, unassuming man. He didn't really toot his own horn or bang his own drum. But it was interesting. I did ask him what was it, Dad? You know, okay, here's this project, here's these guys you're talking about. What did you do? You know, what did you do, Dad? And he said, well, he thought that what he did that was important was two things. The one was the original tries to do this Diana project thing were not very successful. So he thought about it and tinkered with the equipment, went over the equations, thought about it some more, and said, why don't we try this at Moonrise? We're near the ocean, we can have this big bed spring antenna, and we can point it out over the ocean so that we can use the whole surface of the ocean at Moonrise as a reflecting surface. And they did, and DeWitt thought that was a stupid idea and didn't want to do it, but they finally talked him into it, and he gave him a week. Okay, you can do it for a week. The first couple of days, but the third day, hey, Dad and the other person in the Radio Shack with him heard this little beep, and that's what it was. It was the first time anyone had ever reached outside of the ionosphere and touched with that big arm of radar something outside of the Earth. They were very excited about it, and the next day they tried it again. They had expected to both hear the audible beep and see it on the oscilloscope. My dad was the oscilloscope guy, and he didn't get to see anything. So they tried it again the next day, and amazingly, they got both the oscilloscope blip and the audible beep. As Ray said, the boss didn't believe him. They had to repeat the experiment several days in a row to show people that they could replicate this experiment. That's the essence of the scientific method, to be replicable. That they could do it, that it wasn't just somebody listening to, oh, maybe a big bus making some ignition noise, or maybe an airplane, or maybe it was the sun, who knows, that it really was the moon. They did send down the guys from MIT. I think Dad was a little, MIT. But, you know, they did that. I found it also fascinating, being somewhat familiar with the scientific process. They were required to sign sworn affidavits that they had actually conducted this experiment and that they had used the equipment that they said that they used. Like I said, we did some house cleaning, and just today I presented Lori with 2 boxes of stuff, papers, my dad's original lab notes from the night that night 72 years ago when he heard the moon for the first time. A lot of newspaper clippings. Some of them are of great significance, some of them not so much. And this information is priceless. Hopefully, it's priceless in the sense that it is of great value, and not priceless in the sense that it had no value. My dad lived from literally the days of horse and buggy to touching the moon to seeing men land on the moon. The highfalutin predictions that were made in 1946 have come to pass. So many of them have come to pass. That yes, you can use this technology, this radio technology, to do things like map the moon, map the Earth. Hey, wait a minute, I got that right here on my phone. To make the world something that was impossible to think about at that time. Did these guys know they were going to make history? Probably not. Did they know that they were onto something that was interesting and really important? Probably yes. So again, I appreciate very much that InfoAge has taken it upon yourselves to curate and take care of this part of history that otherwise would be so lost and so forgotten. So on behalf of my father's memory and on behalf of my family, thank you very much.
tell you what, this pretty much completes the formal part of the program. We do have the plaques that we gave you. That's for you to take a look at. We get them back. Okay, just want to let you know. But we do have a plaque for the family to take back with them. But the plaques that you have that we presented here go on our wall over there. And a couple of years ago, we started giving a family plaque just to make certain the people had something else to bring home. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for all your support. We look forward to having you come back again. We look forward to having you visit. We look forward to having you, as John DeLuise said, become our ambassadors and tell people what we do here, what we're trying to preserve here, and why it is so important that we preserve what happens so people will know. If you ever seen some of the things right now and to ask people who fought in the Civil War on television, and you look at and you say, why is this happening? Because there's no one teaching them. We're trying to teach history, science, technology, electronics, and math. That's our purpose. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a wonderful evening.